So, hello and welcome back to the next episode of the Self-Development with Tactics fucking podcast. All the time the same shit. No. But as you can see, or as you can actually not see, the same issue I've had the last time as well. We're going ahead with Don't Split the Difference, I think the book is called. I hope. If not, you will definitely see it in the description of either the podcast episode, not the podcast itself, and or in the video description on YouTube. So to just make it a little bit clear, if you are just really, pretty new to the podcast or to the YouTube episode, I'm not going through, I'm sorry, I'm such a, I'm not going through a book summary, and I'll talk about it and just give my shit to it and try to give you as much value as I can. And yeah, so I'm currently on a samuelthomasdavis.com website. I kind of always thought about actually just giving you the websites I'm actually on, or I was just putting the link of the summary that I'm going through in the certain episodes always in the description. I haven't, because I've always just missed it out, unfortunately. I hope I'll do this just this time. Actually, it would be nice if I just write it down somewhere. But no, I think I definitely will forget it, but I won't do it. So so my name is Christopher. I'm an 18-year-old graphic design student from Austria, and I'm pretty fucking pumped to be here with you and just go through this great book, because it is actually a pretty great book. And yeah, I think we will start ahead with chapter 4, Beware Yes and Master No. And actually, if you want to go through the other things, or if you just want to listen to the other things that is in this book, so chapter 1, 2, 3 actually, then check out the other episodes. So the I think actually first episode, yes, totally first episode of this book. You should totally find it by the description. So because I always write it down in the newest episodes what episode it is, and so on, so that actually people can go through these episodes a little bit easier or search for them a little easier. So pushing hard for yes doesn't get a negotiator any closer to a win. It just angers the other side. And that's some kind of totally true. I do not actually know why I say this, but I kind of feel like it. I often do just feel certain things, and therefore I just decide that it's either no or yes or something in between. So for good negotiators, no provides a great opportunity for you and the other party to clarify what you really want by eliminating what you don't want. Definitely. Yeah. So no is the start of the negotiation, note, not at the end of it. Great negotiators seek. So this is basically to just, bring a little light into the dark room. This is a book about negotiations and how to negotiate better, and what's the important part of it, and so on and so on and so on. Yeah, so just to give you a little bit of a sight, if you're just new to this episode, which is fairly just it would make sense, but yeah. So great negotiators seek no because they seek no as no as like the opposite of yes, because they know that it is often when the real negotiation begins. No can often mean I am not ready to agree, you are making me feel uncomfortable, I do not understand, I don't think I can afford it, I want something else, I need more information, or I want to talk it over with someone else. Ask solution-based questions. What about this? What about this doesn't work for you? What would you need to make it work? It seems like there's something here that bothers you. People have a need to say no, so don't just hope to hear it at some point, get them to say it early. There are 3 kinds of yes. The counterfight, fight with F-E-I-T. The second one is the confirmation and the commitment. A counterfight yes is one in which your counterpart plans on saying no, but either feels yes in an easy escape route or just wants to keep the conversation going to get more information or some other kind of edge. A confirmation yes is generally because sorry for the silence, but I just had to turn off the not disturbing mode on my phone, because my phone is actually my microphone, and so that there is no disturption, whatever it is called. But a confirmation yes is generally innocent, a reflexive response to a black or white question. It's sometimes used to lay a trap, but mostly it's just simple affirmation with no promise of action. A commitment yes is the real deal. It's a true agreement that leads to action. A yes at the table that ends with a signature on the contract. The commitment yes is what you want, but the three types sound almost the same, as you have to learn how to recognize which one is being used. Whether you call it buy-in or engagement or something else, good negotiators know that their job is to gently guide their counterpart to discover the goal as his own. Yeah, because people like to discover things on their own, or just think like they have discovered something on their own. So using all your skills to create a rapport, agreement, and connection with the counterpart is useful, but ultimately the connection is useless unless the other person feels that they are equally as responsible, if not solely responsible, for creating the connection and the new ideas they have. Though the intensity may differ from person to person, you can be sure that everyone you meet is driven by two primal urges: the need to feel safe and secure, which is totally true and which makes sense, and the need to feel in control. If you satisfy those drives, you're in the door. And it is just incredible to see that a lot of just feelings we have, a lot of body language positions we just have, or just body posture positions would be a better word to describe what I mean. It's so interesting that a lot of these just pretty new achievements of the human race are just kind of rooted in the very, very, very early, actually, the first days we were actually existing, because we needed these things. We need to feel safe, because if you feel unsafe, we'll just have to do something to feel safe again. Because back in the really ancient days, if we didn't feel safe, it's probably because there was a predator. And back in these days, there were actually predators. And therefore, we also have fears, because we have feared, to practically die. Because nature, or biology, or whatever you want to call it, by its own doesn't want us to die, and it just puts something in us that prevents us from actually dying. And we will do just a lot of things for not dying, like just, killing other animals, killing other humans, and so on and so on and so on. And all these fears and all these kind of other things got put into us so that we actually either don't die, the human race doesn't just starve to death in terms of actually dying, because we're actually not having enough babies, and therefore we all just have the urge for sex, which totally makes sense, because just nature, or our biology wants us to be just existing. And so I think it's just totally interesting that a lot of things are rooted so much back in the really ancient and or first times. So if you're trying to sell something, don't start with, do you have a few minutes to talk? Instead ask, is now a bad time to talk? Either you get yes, it is a bad time, followed by a good time or a request to go away, or you get no, it's not, and total focus. As you can see, no has a lot of skills. No allows the real issues to be brought forth. No protects people from making and lets them correct inefficient decisions. No slows things down so that people can freely embrace the decisions and the agreements they enter into, and no helps people feel safe, secure, emotionally comfortable, and in control of their decisions, and no moves everyone's efforts forward. Another way to force no in a negotiation is to ask the other party what they don't want. If, despite all your efforts, the other party won't say no, you're dealing with people who are indecisive or confused, or who have a hidden agenda. Saying, what is actually agenda? I've read it so often, but I actually haven't. Thank you, motherfucker. Okay, thank you. No, really, thank you. I just have a little window on there where I actually can see what is actually meant in German. So yeah, okay. I do not know if this just, gives me more value or just brings me a little bit forward than just before, but I don't know. So saying no makes the speaker feel safe, secure, and in control. So trigger it. That's why is now a bad time to talk is always better than do you have a few minutes to talk. And it kind of makes sense. I think it also makes sense because in our society we also get, we always get quite called that we shouldn't, or get quite sad that we shouldn't say no so often. You should say more yes and whatever. It always depends on, what circle you're in. But I think and I feel like, most of the time we get taught to not say no, or we kind of feel I kind of feel actually bad when I say no. So I practically do not say no as just really no, but I would rather say no. Well, never mind. So I don't know. I just thought about, okay, I will never say just no, which makes total sense, but at the end I do say something like no, I do not have any time, or I do just have to go home because I want to eat, or just came from school, which is actually the case. You know what? Do you know these people who are just kind of waiting for you to just ask you if you want to just donate for, I don't know, Greenpeace or for charity in general? And the thing is, I always think like, okay, they're just so much wasting the time on me because I will never ever buy something from them. If I would ever just, donate something to charity, which I, did before, I would totally do it like, okay, I will search up a lot of companies, a lot of charity events or charity firms that I like, and then I'll see and compare them and what has the best benefits and what's actually doing the best job, and where can I be sure that, the people and or just the real thing that I want to give money to is actually receiving it, and then I will buy for it, or I will just give it to them. The first time I actually donated something, I didn't do it in this way, but I should, and you should as well. I'm not actually being like, okay, there's a dude or a girl hitting you up on the fucking street, asking you if you want to donate for something. If you have a lot of money, okay, do it. But I feel like, okay, I want to be sure that my money goes somewhere that I can be sure that this will help something and isn't actually going into the pockets of this fucking organization these people are working for. Because I, as I'm talking about it or as I'm thinking about it, I quite feel like, okay, what would it be like, if these companies actually put all the money they put into the people who are just standing on the street, pissing you off or just pissing me off most of the time, often, and always I just feel very, very sorry for them to just being like, no, I don't want to, because I know that all the people are so fucking angry towards them and are so fucking just really, really bad to them. All the people they're encountering, they're just really bad to these people, and actually they didn't do anything to them, but it's only just they being them and they just doing their job. But as to come back to my initial point, I quite feel like why don't these companies just put all this money they put into these people, because they're actually getting paid, they actually get paid pretty well for what they're doing. But why don't they just do it, or why don't they just use this kind of money to actually, I don't know, donate it when they're just, doing something like charity or something like, helping the nature or the environmental things or whatever. Why don't they do that? I don't know, this is always the thing. But the problem is also just I would never buy something from them, even if it is, okay, if it is just really something I can be sure of, and I am sure, and I've also just donated before, I will maybe just give them my data, which is also a thing that I do not like to do, even though I'm just doing it all the fucking time on the internet. But doing it in person is just something different, I kind of feel like. But yeah. My fucking smile. For all the people on the podcast, I'm just smiling right now. If you can't hear it in terms of my voice. But yeah. So sometimes the only way to get your counterpart to listen and engage with you is by forcing them into a no. That means initially mislabeling one of their emotions or desires, or asking a ridiculous ridiculous, ridiculous, yeah, ridiculous, a ridiculous question like, it seems like you want this project to fail. They can only be answered negatively. If a potential business partner is ignoring you, contact them with a clear and conscious no-oriented question that suggests that you are ready to walk away. Have you given up on this project? Works wonders. I think this is actually it. Because do you know these certain parts of a decision, not a decision, but of a kind of argument where all the people are like, okay, they're just bashing each other. And on one time, the other person says, okay, maybe, first of all, going into the direction of the other person, being like, okay, we want to do what you want. And then the other person says like, no, I don't actually want to anymore. This is just a really basic conversation and, of an agreement, not agreement, argument. And or it's actually like the other person want to leave, but the other person then says, okay, no, don't leave, let's talk about it and whatsoever. I think this is quite basically, the exact same thing. It just kind of breaks up the whole pattern of just the whole argument or of this business that's not doing right or whatsoever of this negotiation. Chapter 5, trigger the 2 words that immediately transform any negotiation. Before you convince your counterpart to see what you're trying to accomplish, you have to say the things to them that will get them to say, that's right. That's right is better than yes, strive for it. Reaching that's right in a negotiation creates breakthroughs. Use a summary to trigger a that's right. The building blocks of a good summary are a label combined with paraphrasing, re-articulate, and emotionally affirm the world, and then just, what is it called actually? Because I always say it wrong. Quote unquote. Yes, it's called quote unquote, and I'm always, being like, under quotes or some shit like this, but it's actually, I think, quote unquote, the world according to. Chapter 6, I didn't actually know what they meant by the world according to, but yeah, let's move on. Chapter 6, bend their reality. The most powerful word in negotiation is fair. As a negotiator, you should strive for a reputation of being fair. Your reputation precedes you. Let it precede you in a way that pave success. Know the emotional drivers and you can frame the benefits of any deal in language that will resonate. To get real leverage in a tough negotiation, you have to persuade the other party that they have something to lose if their deal falls through. And here's how. The first one is anchor their emotions. To bend your counterpart's reality, you have to start with the basics of empathy. Start out with an accusation audit acknowledging all of their fears. By anchoring their emotions in preparation for a loss, you inflame the other side's loss aversion so that they will jump at the chance to avoid it. Makes sense, because the feeling of just losing something is way, way, way tougher and harder and bigger and whatsoever than actually gaining something. People rather wouldn't lose something than gaining something. If this makes just some sense in this comparison, but people just hate to lose things. This is just clear. The second one is let the other guy go first most of the time. So going first is not necessarily the best thing when it comes to negotiation or negotiating prices. Let the other side anchor monetary negotiations. By letting them anchor, you also might get lucky. Chris has experienced many negotiations when the other party's first offer was higher than the closing figure he had in mind. If he had gone first, they would have agreed, and he would have left with either the winner's course or buyer's remorse. Those gut-wrenching feelings that he would have had overpaid or undersold. He would have been underpaid and or undersold. So you have got to be careful when you let the other party anchor. You have to prepare yourself psychically psychically to withstand the first offer. If the other guy's a pro, a shark, he's going to go for an extreme anchor in order to bend your reality. Well, yeah. Establish a range. When confronted with naming your terms of price, counter by recalling a similar deal with which establishes your ballpark, albeit the best possible. How do I actually pronounce this? Albeit? Is it albeit? What the fuck? Albeit, whatever it is called, so it's ALBEIT. The best possible ballpark you wish to be in. Instead of saying I'm worth 100,000, say at top places like X Corp, people in this job get between 130,000 and 170,000. That gets your point across without moving the other party into defensive position, and it gets him thinking at higher levels. The fourth one is pivot to non-monetary terms. One of the easiest ways to bend your counterpart's reality to your point of view is to pivot to non-monetary terms. After you've anchored them high, you can make your offer seem reasonable by offering things that aren't important to you but could be important to them. Or if their offer is low, you could ask for things that matter more to you than to them. The fifth one is when you do talk numbers, use odd ones. Numbers that end in 0 inevitably feel like temporary placeholders, guesstimates that you can easily be negotiated off of. But anything you throw out that sounds less rounded, say 37,263, feels like a figure that you came to as a result of a thoughtful calculation. And this makes sense. This is totally true. It actually feels like it. And I don't know. I kind of feel like, just saying, okay, let's make, 24,000. It doesn't sound like, that's strong. But if you're saying actually, which is, basically, I think the whole point they want to make. But if you're actually saying 37,263, the other person might be like, okay, and, what about, I don't know, 25 or something like this. But I kind of just feel that it's just way stronger. It's just a feeling. I often go just with my gut feeling. If it's my gut feeling, I don't know. But it's often the way. And I do just have to say that gut feeling is actually very strong, at my point of view, at least. So it's actually very strong and also quite often pretty right. So often you just think about something and then there's your gut feeling. And then you'll be like, okay, I would rather just pretty much trust my brain because I'm an intelligent person, I know a lot of things, I have a lot of experience, and then you say, fuck, I would have done or I should have done what my fucking gut has said. At the end, in the end. The sixth one is the surprise with a gift. You can get your counterpart into a mood of generosity by staking an extreme anchor and then, after their inevitably first rejection, offering them a wholly unrelated surprise gift. What the fuck? So how to negotiate a better salary? Be pleasantly persistent on non-salary terms. Pleasant persistence is a kind of emotional anchoring that creates empathy with the boss and builds the right psychological environment for constructive discussions. The more you talk about non-salary terms, the more likely you are to hear the full range of their options. For example, asking for extra vacation. Salary terms without, which actually the second point, salary terms without success terms is Russian roulette. Once you have negotiated a salary, make sure to define success for your position, as well as metrics for your next raise. I think all the time when you're basically asking something or asking for something, you should actually always be, which is totally something that I'm just talking about all the fucking time, you should just totally speak in the other person's interest. Not being like, okay, I do want to get a higher salary, but being like, I would like to work harder for your company. I want to bring you harder for your company, but with the resources I'm getting now, it's not that possible. And then he might be like, you know what? I would really like my company to grow a little bit more through your work. So there you get a little bit more money. For me, it sounds more like for them. And if I'm the boss, it kind of feels for me like, okay, no, this person just really wants to work for me. This person wants to work hard. Why shouldn't I give him a higher salary? Even though I do have to say, giving them more money doesn't essentially make them more happy and even make them more happy in the work that they are doing. It just gives them more money, which, with what they can just buy stupid shit again, and more stupid shit and things they don't need and all this fucking shit that a lot of people just buy, which I basically don't quite I'm sorry I don't quite understand. So the third point is spark the interest in your success and gain an unofficial mentor. When you are selling yourself to a manager, sell yourself as more than a body for a job. Sell yourself and your success as a way they can validate their own intelligence and broadcast it to the rest of the company. Make sure they know you'll act as a flesh and blood argument for their importance. Once you have bent their reality to include you as their ambassador, they will have a stake in your success. So when you're selling yourself to a manager, sell yourself as more than a body for a job. Sell yourself and your success as a way they can validate their own intelligence and broadcast it to the rest of the company. I hope you just got what this means. I do not, but unfortunately, fortunately, it's not about me, but it's about you. About you just having a great day, having a great enjoyment of this podcast episode and getting the most value out of it. Not like me getting the most out of it. It is basically just very nice or if I just get something out of it. Because it would be important for me as well. But yeah, so just going through the whole thing over and over again, even, or especially if you just, always just knew or understand what this actually says, will just waste a lot of your time and basically then also a lot of my time, because I can't just put as much value for you into this episode as possible. So ask, what does it take to be successful here? Don't compromise. Meeting halfway often leads to bad deals for both sides. Approaching deadlines, entice, is this actually a word? This is actually a word. Entice, I think it's entice. It's ENTICE. People to rush the negotiation process and do impulsive things that are against their best interests. The F word, fair, is an emotional term people usually exploit to put the other side on the defensive and gain consciousness. When your counterpart drops the F-bomb, don't get suckered into a concession. Instead, ask them to explain how you're mistreating them. You can bend your counterpart's reality by anchoring his starting point. Before you make an offer, emotionally anchor them by saying how bad it will be. When you get to numbers, set an extreme anchor to make your real offer seem reasonable, or use a range to seem less aggressive. This basically, I have never understood the whole anchoring thing. Tony Robbins also talked about it, and in his terms I quite understand it now, because it kind of made sense what it is all about through the one fucking sentence that I was just reading right now. Through the one fucking sentence. And it basically reminds me on priming as well. So priming is basically what I pretty much know only Tony Robbins does. There might be a lot of other people who are doing it, the same way, maybe as he, or just doing it in general as well. It is basically a way to kinda bring your body into a good mood, into a good place, so that your whole day, is or plays into a good place. Which means that you're getting up, you're priming, and you're just putting yourself into just a gratefulness position, in the happiness position, and just, I think grateful is the most important one. And just, maybe you're just doing something really in the morning, like doing your bed, and so on, so that you really just prime your day, prime yourself in a good mood, for a good mood, so that you can actually, practically, if I'm just I hope I can explain it how I want it, but I can't somehow, not yet. Never say can't, you can't it yet, or you can't do it yet. It kind of feels for me like if you tell a person, okay, this is going to be a shitty offer, they probably will mean that this product is shitty even though it is not. Because you said it, you just primed these people to just feel or just think that it is what you said it is. And therefore I just kind of think, and I'm very sorry if he's just explaining that and I'm just not getting it and whatsoever, but this is quite the basic thing with, or the basic, simple, and fuck it, the exact same thing with the exact same thing with Tony Robbins priming himself, just putting himself in a position that all the things that happen actually are just somehow positive, because he primed himself in a positive way. But yeah, so you can bend your counterpart to reality by anchoring his starting point. Before you make an offer, emotionally anchor them by saying how bad it will be. I've read that. So people will take more risks to avoid a loss than to realize a gain. So people will take more risks to avoid a loss than to realize a gain. Make sure your counterpart sees that there is something to lose by inaction, which is just the same thing that I was talking about before, that people actually I don't know why, it makes sense, because, back in the early days, which, kind of the same fucking thing as I was just talking before, the funny thing that, always could be translated really back into the days, if you're just thinking about, how they were living or how they were probably living, that just losing some kind of food, losing a person, losing their children, losing water, losing, I think especially food, but I just named it, but I think especially food, losing food, which may mean that you will starve, that may mean that you will have not enough food, totally feels for me more just better, like it's worse, sorry, it's feeling like worse than actually gaining something feels good. Like if I'm just thinking about the really early people, they were just hunting and collecting stuff and whatsoever, and they had hunted or they collected a few berries, a few heidelberries. Are they actually called blueberries actually? But I think are they actually also called heidelberries? Never mind. So they actually collected a few blueberries, and then they just lost a few of them, or even the half or 3/4 of them, which is totally shit. Because there are, a decent amount of people. There are maybe 2 children and 2 adults, and they just have to eat quite a lot. The thing is, they just lose a lot of their food, and it really hurts, and it hurts more it hurts more losing all the shit than actually having 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 berries more feels good. Yeah. Motherfucker. I think, I will totally go through chapter 7, and this then will be the episode. So create the illusion of control. When you go into a store, instead of telling the sales clerk what you need, you can describe what you're looking for and ask for suggestions. Then, once you have picked out what you want, instead of hitting them with a hard offer, you can just say the price is a bit more than you budgeted and ask for help with one of the greatest of all time calibrated questions: how I am supposed to do that? Calibrated questions have the power to educate your counterpart on what the problem is, rather than causing conflict by telling them what the problem is. So calibrated questions have the power to educate your counterpart on what the problem is, rather than causing conflict by telling them what the problem actually is. So you should use calibrated questions early and often, and there are a few that you will find that you will use at the beginning of nearly every negotiation. What is the biggest challenge you face? Is one of those questions. So here are some other great standbys that Chris uses in almost every negotiation, depending on the situation. So what about this is important to you? How can I help to make this better for you? How would you like me to proceed? What is What is it that brought us into this situation? How can we solve this problem? What's the objective and what are we trying to accomplish? And last but not least, how am I supposed to do that? Calibrated questions make your counterpart feel like they are in charge, but it's really you who are framing, or who is actually framing, the conversation. Or actually, who are is actually also possible. So even with all the best techniques and strategy, you need to regulate your emotions if you want to have any hope of coming out on top. The first and most basic rule of keeping your emotional cool is to bite your tongue. Another simple rule is when you are verbally assaulted is to disarm your your counterpart by asking a calibrated question. So when people feel that they are not in control, they adopt what psychologists call a hostage mentality. That is, in moments of conflict, they react to their lack of power by either becoming extremely defensive or lashing out. Avoid questions that can be answered with yes or tiny pieces of information. These require little thought and inspire the human need for reciprocity. Reciprocity, and you will be expected to give something back. Ask calibrated questions that start with the words how or what by implicitly asking the other party for help. These questions will give your counterpart an illusion of control and will inspire them to speak at length, revealing important information. And this is just a fact that people just like to talk about themselves and or their experience or what they just know, or just put them on. This is what people really like. If they get put on by other people, and if people are actually really genuinely interested in what they have to say. Always. You can just keep attention to it, and you will just definitely find it always. Always, if you're just asking someone to just tell something about them, and you're always asking questions and keeping the conversation on, and so on, until maybe they have no time anymore, or you, they will enjoy this whole conversation, and they will totally say this was a great conversation, even though they were actually the only ones that were talking. Also something that I learned from How to Win Friends and Influence People, by the way. So check the book out. It is really a great book. I can't recommend it more often, but I think it's one of the books that just really changed my mind. And it is also always great to hear how you can not manipulate, but how you can just use certain words or your language to really just create something in other people. If it's just something positive or negative, it's just doesn't matter right now. It's just very interesting that you are able to do it. But by the way, I just always try to put positive stuff into people and never just fuck them over or just get their money through some manipulation or some shit like this. So don't ask questions that start with why, unless you want your counterpart to defend a goal that serves you. Why is always an accusation in any language. Calibrate your questions to point your counterpart towards solving your problem. This will encourage them to expand their energy on devising a solution. There is always a team on the other side. If you are not influencing those behind the table, you are vulnerable. And with that being said, this was actually the end of chapter 7. Then there's chapter 8, which is fucking long. Chapter 9. Was there another chapter? And chapter 10, which is the last one. So there are 3 chapters to go with, which I'm totally going to talk about tomorrow. Today's episode was kind of interesting. I still just, I will upload it anyways, but I didn't have a lot of words to what I was saying actually, because most of the time, to be honest, I didn't understood it. I didn't get it. What he was talking about, whether it's because I am, just not tired, but it's, it has been a long day, or it was because I just don't know the sentence constructions, or it was because I didn't keep, great attention to the things that I was actually reading. I don't know, but I still hope that you got a lot out of it, and do think this is just an incredible good book. Also in terms of how it got written and, whatsoever, it just really has a lot of value also to it. And I think people will understand it quite good, even though I'm not understanding. But I quite feel like, okay, other people rather than me will totally understand what I think. I just think it, what he's actually saying in his book. Yeah. But with that being said, 40 minutes in, actually one of the longer episodes that I've been doing in a few weeks. Actually, I've also always quite just stagnated at 30 minutes, 35 minutes, something like this. Some months ago I actually did an hour versions, but I do think like for the YouTube video it's better to be a little shorter. For the podcast it's a little bit longer, and so I don't know, it's something like 40 minutes, something like 30 minutes is quite okay. I think I think it just works. Well, with that being said, sorry. I hope you have a wonderful day, or you had a wonderful day, or you will have a wonderful day, and or night for all the three things. And yeah, don't forget about your legacy. Don't forget about giving back to other people. And I still wish you the best health, the wealth, the success, and the happiness. And with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Or actually today, if you just check out my Instagram or any other social media platform.